Hello, Captains. In today's video, first, I'll tell you about a fringe theory for the biggest hoax in human history. Please don't take this seriously. It's all science fiction and just my overactive imagination running wild. Then, to lighten the mood, I'll share a funny story with you at the end. Is a covert plan about to emerge that was 80 years in the making, sucking countless amounts of taxpayer money, all the while gatekeeping advanced energy technology? That's the question. The psychopaths in charge of this impending hoax I'm about to tell you about are what I've been referring to as the global control system. I estimate there's around 1,000 of these people still alive today, in the know, running the show. Many of us have encountered these maniacs out and about when they aren't hiding away. But some of these people are public facing and have been in the news every day for decades. They're the ones who think their bowel movements smell like roses. You know who I'm talking about. They are so overconfident and delusional that they actually think they can dominate the entire world with this stunt they're about to pull. So what are they going to do? Well, it'll be their final attempt to make everyone submit to their self-proclaimed power. It will be their final attempt to make everyone lose touch with God and fool the common folk into believing in a fake alien invasion instead. Aliens invading Earth to stop us from going to nuclear war. Now, I will say, it's going to look amazing, unlike anything our collective modern civilization has ever seen. So, get ready to see a giant, pulsating web of lasers and plasma orbs covering the entire night sky that will follow the night sky around the world for days, and maybe even weeks and months. It may look frightening to some, but to most of us common folk, it'll be laughable. So enjoy the extravagant laser shows and plasma shows in the sky, but no, it is not real. It is totally fabricated. And do not panic, because it's all made by us today. The mainstream mass media and select social media influencers already have their narratives queued up. It'll go something like this. Who thinks the aliens will attack on August 1st? Or whatever date they come up with. Everybody, open an account today on your favorite prediction markets and place your bets. Bet yes or no today. The nonsense will drag on for weeks and months, all the while demonstrating their technological dominance. Who thinks the aliens will disappear on September 11th? Who thinks the orbs will turn green on April 20th? And so on. But it seems they've encountered what I'll call a technical difficulty right now in the final deployment phase of their hoax. So they had to put it on hold while the never-ending wars continue. I have no proof, but something keeps telling me that scientists recently confirmed something they had always suspected and had always had some unconfirmed evidence of, that there's a civilization-ending natural object that's on a collision course towards Earth. So now, in a panic, the global control system had to scramble to protect themselves from the actual real threat to humanity. Natural threat. Now, in their state of panic, if these maniacs decide to rain hell down on certain areas of the world, well, then God has a special place for these people. And let me tell you, that place is very, very real. Okay, now it's time for the lighthearted story that I promised you guys. All right, enjoy.
You ever heard of a guy named Omar Bradley, a general?
Might have heard the name, but
Yeah, he was Eisenhower's second in command, and Eisenhower was the Supreme Allied Commander of when World War II in Europe, and in charge of over the French generals and the English, everybody. He was in charge of the whole war.
what was?
Omar Bradley was the second in command. He was a 4-star, and Eisenhower was a 5-star, I think. One of the few 5-star generals we had. But Brad, old guy, he used to go to church there in National City. And I didn't really know who it was when I sat in a certain... I liked to sit in a pew to the left, by the stained glass windows, and this old dude used to sit right there too. So I didn't know who it was. So got talking to him, and we became friends and all. And when I wanted to join the service, I thought, well, I want to join the Army. It was Vietnam time, and so I told him, I said, I'm thinking of joining the service. And so what are you doing? I said, well, I want to go into engineers because I want to be in heavy equipment, operation, repair, heavy equipment. He said, well, if you do, join up and, let me know. He says, I'll write you. I said, wow, that would be great. Wow. So he said, look, just tell your sister will know. Just tell her your APO address and everything, and I can write you too. And I said, sure, I'll get it from her. So sure enough, I went through basic training in Fort Benning and Georgia, and then I went to different things. So whenever I go to a different station, a different place, like whether it's Japan or Vietnam or whatever, I'd of course tell my parents, write my parents, and I'd let her know, and she would let General Bradley know where I was, and he'd write advanced infantry training and all that. And heavy equipment training, and so I'm sitting out when you have a mail call and everybody's out there in formation, calls everybody name, Wilson, and the guy go and get his mail, and so everybody gets their mail. So me and a couple other guys are just left there, and he says, okay, well, that's about it, except Taylor, the captain wants to talk to you. I thought, holy shit. What did I do, Well, I didn't say, okay, yes, Sergeant. So I went up, captain's office. Captain saluted and said, yes, sir, you wanted to speak to me, sir? So, yeah, Taylor. He says, hey, I got some mail for you. And so I said, because I was just out in mail call. I said, well, I wanted to give this to you. So he gives me this letter. And it says General Omar Bradley. Says, why are you getting a letter? Can I ask? He says, can I ask why you're getting a letter from a general, Army general, addressed to you? I said, oh yeah, it's Brad. He said, who? I said, well,
my first name basis.
My friend Brad. He says, well, wait a minute, you mean General Bradley, Omar Bradley? I said, no, he likes me and him. He likes to be called Brad. I said, that's my friend Brad. He said, you're friends with General Brad? I said, yeah, we're friends. So we sit together in church and all that. And I thought, he says, oh, shit. So, he says, oh, well, here, if you want to tell me what it's about, or you don't, that's okay too. I said, oh, it's nothing. I opened it, I looked at it, he just wants to know how I'm doing, and blah, 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 and I got to write him back. And he says, well, okay. And not only that, I had also gotten a letter from my neighbor who lived next door to my parents, and he's the head provost marshal, the head of the military police at over in Arlington, at the not Fort Myer, but Arlington Hall Station, which was where DIA and DSA, Defense Investigative Agency, Defense Security Agency are. And I got letters from him too, and before that, and it was on Army envelope. So why are you getting a letter from this colonel? And I said, oh, because my parents, they live next door to my parents, and he just wants to know how I'm doing. So that was right before that. That was like a couple weeks before that. And now I got a letter from General Bradley, so his captain shaking his head. And I said, okay. So he takes he had my file folder in the desk. His desk, he pulls out my file folder, puts it on a desk, and has this big stamp. It goes, it says PC in red letters on the front of the file folder. And I said, Captain, is that my file folder? He said, yes. Oh, it's yours, yeah. I said, why are you stamping it? What does that PC mean? Did something wrong? Oh, no, you haven't done anything wrong. You haven't done it wrong. It just means politically connected. I said, whoa. I said, and I'm thinking, is that a good thing? And I think, I asked somebody, I said, Sarge, I said, people that are politically connected and they're in the service, is that a good thing? He says, oh, no, not always. Sometimes it's a disadvantage. And I said, why? Do you know anybody like that? I said, whoa, well, I'm not sure if it's me. And he said, but I don't think so. I said, I don't want to have nothing to do with it. But yeah, so they treat you different. They don't want to piss you off. One thing, and he says, "Oh, well, Kaler, if you had KP duty this week, but kitchen police." He said, "But you don't have to do it. We'll give it to somebody else. We'll give it to Rogers." And I thought, no, I said, if I come up on a list and I have kitchen police, then I'll do it. I'll go peel potatoes or whatever you need me to do, whatever. He said, "Don't you?" He said, "Well, we just want to make sure you're happy here." I said, "What, are you kidding me?" That's one of the things I asked General Bradley. I said, Brad, when he heard I was going to service, I said, how can you tell, I want to, do my job, but I want to be happy too. I said, how can you, can do both, have a balance there.
A work-life balance.
Yeah,
you asked
exactly.
Them.
He says, I'll tell you, Lee. I says, I'll tell you how I know when I wake up in the morning and get up, and you know how I can tell whether I'm having a good work-life balance or I'm happy about things? I said, no, sir. He says, if I have a good bowel movement, that's how come I know I'm going to have a great day. And I said, Jesus Christ. I said, I'm thinking, what? He says, yeah. He says, I'm not kidding you. I said, you get to be my age, and boy, if you have a good bowel movement, boy, that sets you up for the rest of the day. You ask. He said, you ask, I'm telling you. I said, you're not my age, but when you do, when you get to my age, you'll understand. I said, yes, sir.
Oh,
so I thought that was the weirdest, strangest, it's funny.
Yeah.
He was serious.
Mm-hmm.